and appreciate all the council members that are serving on it and the council members who aren't but are here to listen. This first meeting is intended to be just an organizing meeting to get us moving forward, but not discuss any of the substance of what we'll ultimately consider. There's an agenda that's been published, and I'm going to go through the agenda and at different points along the way, I guess with each agenda item, I'll stop and find out whether committee members have comments or something to add. The first item on the agenda is the scope of committee work, and for that, what we have is the press release from the vice mayor when he created the committee, and I'll go over some of what that talks about because I think that establishes our scope. The committee is related to, the press release says, the East Bank Stadium and infrastructure. It's to serve as a central place to gather information for the council and the public. Our goal is to conduct an effective and transparent process for both the council and the public, and to the extent there are public hearings, we would be the committee to lead those public hearings. And the other thing that I would add is I discussed with all the committee members and the vice mayor that we anticipate that our committee is not going to vote in favor of recommending or not recommending any particular legislation along the way. Our job is to gather information, enough information for to get the public and council members well enough informed to make a quality decision about the legislation that we'll ultimately see regarding the stadium and especially the infrastructure that goes along with the East Bank. So I'll pause there. That's what we've got as scope. I really view us as the tip of the spear for the council to gather information rather than having it happen through 4 or 5 different committees that might touch on different aspects. Will be the central place for gathering information. Any comments about that? All right, then the next item on the agenda is about meeting schedule. And I'm going to go ahead and I've spent a fair amount of time thinking about this, and I'm going to propose both a 100,000-foot level for the course of all the committee work, and then some very specific next steps for our next 2 meetings. And I'll start with the 100,000-foot information. I view our work as really in 3 phases. Phase 1 would be between now and whenever a deal is announced between the team and the mayor's office. And phase 2 would be between the announcement and when actual legislation is presented. And then phase 3 is after legislation is presented. And in each phase, there would be a different focus. In the first phase, between now and when an announcement is coming, which, you know, by rumor, end of August, sometime in September-ish, who knows. The idea would be that we would be fact-finding, doing our own information gathering, trying to get resources gathered, videos put together, presentations to go on a website for the public on basic information about how to understand the context of what's going on in the East Bank, and more about that when I talk about what I propose for the next couple meetings. Phase 2, after there is a announcement of what the deal is, I imagine that the mayor's office and or the team will want to come to us and present that, and so we would need that and hear the details. And then I think is when we would go conduct public listening sessions around the county to hear what folks have to say about the proposal, and exactly where and exactly how many. I mean, I've got some ideas about that, but I think it's probably premature at this point. We got plenty of time to talk about about that. And if we manage to hear out the parties for what the deal was and then engage in the public listening over the course of a month or so, presumably somewhere around then, legislation we presented. And I would view the committee's work as basically checking to see that the legislation matches up with what the announcement was. If the legislation matches the announcement, then maybe there's not a lot more for the committee to do at that point. To the extent that there are more details or differences between the legislation and the proposal, I would view it as our job to learn more and gather information about what the new information is or what the differences are. So those are the three phases. For this next phase, and in particular the next two meetings, the dates, well, let me talk about what I am proposing for the next three meetings. I'm going to give you some dates and then topics. I've got the chamber reserved on July 28 in 2 weeks, on August 18, and then on August 31. And again, for this part of the program, it would be to learn basic facts. And so for the July 28 meeting, I'm suggesting that we have three phases for that meeting, basically a half hour each. And there would be PowerPoints that we can post online and videos that we can have that will anticipate questions that we know are going to be frequently asked through the process, and we can direct the public and council members to these resources. And the three components of the July 28 meeting, the first one would be from planning, and Lucy Kemp has already agreed to come talk to us. And what I've asked her to do is that her team and the football team and the mayor's office, they know a lot of things that are sort of pre-kindergarten, preschool, kindergarten level information for them because they've been through it. Who owns the land? What's it zoned for? What are the land use requirements or options or maximum density, basically the land use characteristics, and a discussion about the roads. These are things that I think the parties in the negotiations have internalized long ago and know off the back of their hand, and but most of the rest of us don't have those things internalized. And so it wouldn't be about the future or plans for the future. It would be basically Lucy, from the planning department's perspective, giving us a 101 about what's over there on the East Bank, what can be done with it, who owns it, what are the characteristics of the land. The second part of the presentations on July 28 would be our director, Ms. Darby, giving us a tutorial about what was the deal in 1996 for the current football stadium, just the basics about what the legislation was, and like, I don't even know what else there is to know about that, but telling us what happened in 1996. And then the third component, also from Ms. Darby, will be digging into the technical side of this first-class condition issue. And just for committee member wrote, and we're talking about what we would discuss at a next meeting, the first substantive meeting, and so the three parts: planning, talking about the land and the characteristics of the land; Ms. Darby talking about what was the deal in 1996 when the stadium got built, and then third, Ms. Darby giving us a tutorial on technically what does this first class condition thing that we've heard about in the media mean. And again, for this meeting, I imagine 27,000 times between now and whenever council will vote, members of the public, council members are going to say, I don't even know what's going on over there, or what was the deal in 1996, or first class condition. Well, tell me about that. And the idea is that all of us will be able to say, hey, great. So on July 28th, there was a meeting, there's a video, there's a PowerPoint, it's online, here's the link, check it out, rather than having to describe it 27,000 different times. We'll have a resource that's there. So that's the what I propose for the July 28 meeting. And then for the August 18 meeting, I don't have speakers lined up yet, but what I would like it to be is to dig into this issue that we've all seen talked about the repair obligation for the current stadium, and I think it's important that this be the council gathering information, and so I would like to dig into that next. So by the time we get to the end of August, theoretically, we will have compiled resources about what's the status of the land over there, what happened in the past, what is the technical language about first-class condition, what are the arguments about a repair obligation, and that presumably will be a jumping-off point for going forward. For the August 31 meeting, after we've had a couple meetings to get our feet under us as a committee, my intention would be to invite the mayor's office and the team to tell us that would be the end of August. Maybe something's been announced by then, maybe something is about to be announced, but the idea would be to invite the mayor's office and the team at that point to basically answer the question of what's up, what's the current status, what's going on, so with that, I will pause. That's what I view for the arc of the entire committee and the next several meetings. Councilman Withers.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Mendez. July 28th is a Planning Commission meeting date. And so I wanted to maybe verify the timing of what time that meeting might start, since I know that you're wanting Director Kemp to be present.
Yeah, and she knows about the meeting and said that she would be here because that's part of the reason why I asked her. I'm going to try to do all the meetings at 4:30 here, and so maybe Ms. Darby can. Lucy told me she would do it, or somebody on her staff could do it. So we'll iron that out. Unfortunately, okay. The chamber has taken on the. I would like to aim for doing these meetings on Wednesdays, but for this meeting and the next one, the chamber was spoken for. For the starting at August 31, hopefully we're going to stick to Wednesdays so we can avoid planning commission conflicts. Councilman Druffel.
Yeah, Chair, thanks so much. Just a housekeeping note. Would you have a Zoom availability, like for the 28th? I know I'll be out of town, but I could still make it. Will we have a Zoom availability for the meeting? I
think Ms. Darby will tell us that our friends at the state make that illegal.
Okay, I didn't know if you could at least hear or something.
Well, you'll be able. I think you should be able to watch it on Metro Nashville Network. So you can watch it, but I don't think you can participate legally under state law remotely.
Thanks. Okay, thanks.
All right. All right, and. Councilman Roten.
Bob, I know you will, so this is a very stupid question, but are you going to be sending us out some calendar dates? And yeah, I knew you were, so that's all right. Thanks.
Definitely, I'll probably over communicate, but yeah, we'll get that out. We just got the dates firmed up in the last couple days. Anybody else about, it doesn't sound like there's any objections to moving forward with the next couple meetings as described, at least. We might have to have some flexibility about further out depending on if circumstances change, but at least I've described what I've got in mind for the group and the next couple meetings. Okay, not seeing any further comments on that. Next item on the agenda is committee web presence. And so ITS has decided that I think due to the effective advocacy of our director that we're not going to be forced onto SharePoint for this, and we're going to be able to have a web presence that looks more like what finance does with nested links to different pages with information. And I think that's valuable because the SharePoint links are very difficult to share, ironically, with on social media in particular, and it's easier with the way the finance department does it. So we're going to be able to do that. And Ms. Darby and I have discussed that the organization of the materials may have to morph over time as we learn more and get into more topics. But the idea is going to be to try to have something that's organized the way Chair Allen's materials were for the budget, where there's a lot of information, hopefully with nested links that are intuitive, hopefully. But I know a project like this is going to morph over time, and so the organization that makes sense for the first couple meetings might have to get updated over time. And so I would really urge committee members and everybody in the council, if we get a couple months down the road and you're looking at the materials and you think, I can't find anything, this is dumb, like speak up and let our director know. And the goal is to try to make it as intuitive as we can while being as complete as we can. So please let her know, let me know if you find the materials difficult to deal with, because I think we're planning on accumulating a lot of information, hopefully, for folks to look at. And then the last agenda item is, I guess, goes hand in hand with that, of it's time to start gathering questions from council members. And I'll get a communication out to everybody that is in line with to let people know about the scheduling and the meetings coming up, but especially if people have questions along the lines of what I've proposed discussing at the first two meetings about, I just don't understand X basic information about the East Bank or the stadium footprint. Now's the time to ask that. And we're gonna, I don't know if we're gonna answer every single question independently the way we typically do for budget. We might take the liberty of condensing similar questions into one, but I definitely, like anything anybody wants to hear about or they think is relevant as background information for understanding the deal that they think is coming down the road or the East Bank development generally down the road, like let's start sending questions. And so there's going to be an open invitation to all council members to start sending questions to Danielle Godin in the council office, so we can start populating answers online and start gathering the information that people think they need or just want to think about the deals that they think are coming down the road. So that is all I have to say about that. I understand that this meeting was mostly me talking. I'm happy to take a different direction or comments on any of it. Councilmember Allen?
Thank you for letting me speak since I'm not really on the committee. One question about the August 18th meeting. I think I appreciate the big picture. That's such a great way to get folks oriented. On the August 18th meeting, when you talk about the repair obligation, will that include a possible review of the existing estimates that we've heard and just a little bit of an explanation of where they came from and how that fits in with this study that we're doing? Yeah,
and I can tell you what I plan to ask for, and I just, with the holiday, I haven't had a chance to sit down with the administration, so I know Mr. Jameson is here and we'll take my comments back. What would be most helpful for me is, so we just put in the budget at Councilman Parker's request and in your substitute $200,000 for the city to do some work, and I understand that maybe the vendor has been picked but still working on what the scope is. I would like to see a reconciliation, basically, for lack of a better term, between the study done 5 years ago and the recent information from the team and anything that is the result of the current study. Just by way of example, there may be some things that show exactly the same price Like, okay, that's fine. It could be that somebody says, well, in 2017, we never could have imagined what the price of steel is now, and so that's $75 million more right there. I'm making stuff up. But like, okay, like after a line item like that, well, okay, let's talk about the next $1.4 billion difference. I would like to see a reconciliation that would put us all in a position, again, just like adequate information to make an informed decision. It sounds like maybe you're suggesting the same thing.
Yeah, I'm just wondering optimistically if that would, I mean, it'd be lovely to have all that information on the 18th, and I don't, clearly we probably won't have our study, but if we could at least begin to fill that in so that when the study's done, that can be put against it and maybe come back to. I didn't know if that was part of that agenda or if it'll have to happen later.
I share that view that seems over-optimistic to think that we'll be done by then. But to me, like if I'm a member of the public and I'm trying to make sense of everything, by the time we talk about that, we will have already gotten a tutorial on what first-class condition means. We will already gotten a tutorial on what the original deal was. And then the relevant data right now is, okay, we had this thing 5 years ago that said one number. We got a thing now from somebody else that says a different number. Like, how do I process that? And even if we're not at the finish line on that on August 18, I think ultimately people want to know more about how to process the substantial difference. And again, like, it could be that we're hearing 120% the truth from the parties in the negotiation, but there's so much further down the learning curve that the rest of us need to be brought along that as well. And so I've got some ideas about who, but I haven't talked to that person yet, so I don't want them to find out that they're talking on the 18th before I talk to them about it. Councilman Withers.
Thank you. Again, Councilmember Mendez. One thing about, I think, the title of this committee itself and the scope that I actually hope that these discussions can help us to parse out is that there is an overall East Bank planning study which covers a pretty large area, including up into District 5, for instance, and obviously there's the area of the stadium footprint. It also includes the PSC Metals footprint. And it's a planning document for all of that area. I think there is a lot of there's a lot of interest in trying to parse out, I think from an infrastructure perspective especially, which aspects of that are related to the stadium or not, because, you know, again, like we're doing pursuing right-of-way acquisition for some areas north of James Robertson Parkway that probably aren't related to the stadium. There's a lot of kind of visioning for mobility and a lot of great things that aren't necessarily, I mean, they would certainly benefit a stadium too, but aren't necessarily triggered by the stadium. So I think for me, that's one thing that maybe we can work with planning and the rest of the administration to get a little bit better handle on which aspects of the overall visioning and infrastructure from the East Bank really are related to the stadium. And the reason why I think that's important is that we will have a stadium deal probably later this calendar year, but we will not be anywhere close to having design, for instance, for all of the roads and bridges done probably this term. But maybe as we continue these discussions and kind of parsing that out a little bit more, that can help us to get a good understanding and communicate to the public a good understanding about what portions of that infrastructure that is being planned really do relate and are triggered by the stadium, and which ones are a little bit more regional in scope.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's, and posing it as a question, I think is appropriate. I'll give you all just my perspective of how this committee fits in with the ongoing extensive work for the East Bank planning generally. I view it, and so this is not binding in any way, shape, or form. It's just, you know, one guy's idea. My view is that this committee is definitely wanting to learn everything there is to learn about the stadium, immediately adjacent parking, if any, and 130 acres that are subject to a state sales tax recapture zone for sure. Like, for sure. And then inevitably, there's going to be a gray area about, well, there's a big old road, assuming the state doesn't take it away from us. There's going to be a big north-south connector road that's going to like go right out in front. And so are we interested in that only to the extent it covers 130 acres, or are we interested in that beyond that? I think there's a gray area where I think the makeup of the committee, from the vice mayor, if I can read into his thinking a little bit, is I think there's some trust that we're fair-minded people, that when we get to the gray area, we're gonna know whether we've gone too far or not far enough. But I think stadium, immediately adjacent parking, 130 acres, everything that's going in there is definitely our purview and obligation to gather information for the council and the public. Inevitably, there's not going to be just like a bright line at the edge of the 130 acres. And so I do think we'll have to engage in parsing out, like, oh, no, that's not part of it, or, oh, no, some component is definitely part of it. I think we're going to bump into that at some point. Anybody else have thoughts about that they want to share? All right. Well, I don't have anything else on the agenda. I thank everybody for serving. I know there's some council members are going to be probably here every meeting. Would appreciate you're our ex officio members, sort of, and we welcome everybody's participation. Really, the goal is that by the time people have to vote, like, there's going to be a full recognition that the council did more than just wave at this, that we dug in, learned information, gathered information for ourselves and the public, and made it accessible and put everybody in a position to make the best decisions they could make. Yeah, Councilman Broughton.
Sorry, I was just thinking of one thing we were talking about. We're looking at the stadium and everything. Are we going to be able to get a good, I guess, either from the team or from accounting firms or some type of the return on investment that we might see, and how the length of that return on investment? That's what I really want to know, because that's kind of, if you're putting money in, you got to see kind of what you're going to get back today, tomorrow, 10 years, 20, you know what I mean? That's kind of what I want to see. So that's what I really want to know.
I'll tell you my thought on that too. You know, if we were in the private world, which we're not, but if we were in the private world, the team's got a bunch of professionals, and the mayor's office got a bunch of professionals, and we'd go hire smart people who could figure that stuff out, and they'd advise us directly. I'm guessing the council doesn't have an appetite for spending, $25 million on its own professionals, or $5 million or $1 million or $500,000. So we're necessarily going to have to rely on information from others on that. I assume we're going to hear about that. I'm assuming when we get presented with an actual deal, there's going to be a list of income streams and a look forward about what it generates over time and sources and uses. I assume we're all going to want to dig into that. We will almost certainly have to rely on information, from people hired by other than the council. But I think we're definitely going to get that information, and we should get that information. Anybody else? All right. Well, we will be back then on July 28th here, and we're going to make sure all these are televised, so the video's online. And again, I'm going to get a communication out. Anybody who a question occurs to you about the thing you'd like to know, send it to Danielle in the office, and we'll start gathering that information to get the website presence going. So with that, we'll be adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.